As MAGA Republican Jim Jordan tries and fails and tries and fails again and again and again to become the new Speaker of the House, his fellow MAGA cultists are openly threatening Republicans who don't support him and their families, and it's gotten a lot worse since the last time we talked about it. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Okay, folks, we're going to play a clip here in just a bit. It's a long one. It's from CNN, and a Republican is interviewed. They have an audio recording of a voicemail that was left to the wife of a Republican congressman who didn't vote for Jim Jordan. There's a lot of strong language in there. They bleep out most of it, but they leave some of it in, also just to make the point. We're going to discuss it or cover it in just a second. Now, I wrote an article about this, or rather, this was actually before the audio came out, but just the increasing level of threats and violence against those who didn't support Jim Jordan. I wrote an article about it on Luke Beasley's website, lukebeasleyshow.com/news. Many Republicans who oppose Jim Jordan are receiving death threats, okay? It's gotten a lot worse. When we did a video about this the other day, Don Bacon, who is an allegedly moderate Republican who said he wasn't going to vote for Jim Jordan, well, his wife got a very creepy text message that you can interpret a number of ways. Now, I'm not particularly inclined to give MAGA or Republicans the benefit of the doubt, especially based on the data, so I'm inclined to interpret it in the most severe sense. Maybe you're not there yet, but she got a text message, and we did a video about this, saying, "Why is your husband causing chaos by not supporting Jim Jordan? I thought he was a team player." She said, "Who is this?" "Oh, now you have nothing to say," because of course it was anonymous. Then the person responds, "Your husband will not hold any political office ever again. What a disappointment and failure he is." Now, some people may be inclined to say, well, they just mean they'll primary him or vote him out. I don't know. I have no reason to be that charitable to the MAGA cult, and especially after subsequent events. So before we play the clip again, Jake Sherman, who is arguably the best political reporter with respect to Congress. He's from Punchbowl News. He's got a lot of Republican sources. He says in the meeting yesterday between Jim Jordan and holdouts, close Jordan ally Warren Davidson said it's not Team Jordan's fault that holdouts are getting death threats. They're getting the death threats, he said, because they voted against Jordan, okay? It's not Jim Jordan's fault that you all are being threatened. It's your fault for not voting for Jordan. Absolutely disgusting stuff. But if you think that's appalling, just wait till you hear and see this. Again, this is a clip from CNN. The audio of this voicemail, it's a long voicemail. It's in here. They bleep most of it out, but there is some strong language. And then Jake Tapper follows it up with a quick interview with a Republican congressman.
I have some exclusive audio right now of a threatening message that was left as a voicemail for the wife of one of the Republican lawmakers who opposes Jordan. This has only been edited to take out identifying information of the wife and the lawmaker. We've bleeped out some of the language, but not all of it. And I want to warn you, this is pretty ugly stuff. Take a listen.
Why is your husband such a pig? Why would he get on TV and make an asshole of himself? Because he's a deep state prick? Because he doesn't represent the people? So what we're going to do is we're going to come follow you all over the place. We're going to be up your ass nonstop. We are now Antifa. We're going to do what the left does because your of a husband gets on TV. Just, oh, the bad guys, they did so. I'm going to vote for Kevin McCarthy, a piece of shit who everybody knows. And for his piece of shit ass, talk about Americans who are actually fighting for Americans as the bad people, says everything about him. So you, your husband, and we're not like the left. We aren't violent, but we're going to follow your ass, every appointment you have, everything you do. Your husband's an asshole. You should talk to his stupid ass. We're at war. Israelis being killed, and your dumb husband is acting like a 2-year-old. No wonder. He's a warmongering piece of shit. So listen, you're going to keep getting calls and emails. I'm putting all your information over the internet now. Everybody else is, and you will not be left alone because your husband, Jim Jordan, or more conservative, or you're going to be molested like you can't ever imagine. And again, non-violently. You won't go to the beauty parlor. You must be a bitch to marry a ugly motherfucker like that.
Before we get to Jake Tapper's exchange with a Republican congressman, I just want to say, obviously, incredibly, despicably unhinged. So this guy is mad at this woman's Republican congressman, and yet he insults her directly. Doesn't just leave. It's bad. It would be bad enough if he just left a threatening voicemail for her husband, but he's so angry. He's so hateful. He's mad at her. He calls her names. He calls her ugly. He denigrates her. He blames you. F you. You're this. You're that. Whatever. That is how intensely furious and deranged this man is. He drops the F slur in reference to her husband. Says that, you know, he's basically on the left because he's voting for Kevin McCarthy or not voting for Jim Jordan. And then, of course, I love the disclaimers, well, we're not like the left, but blah, 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 and then goes on this whole rant and screed again. Then says, again, not violently. So just absolutely, unbelievably deranged and inexcusable. And again, we're going to unpack it because there's way more than just this. But this is the follow-up to that clip.
With me now to discuss Republican Congressman Mike McCall from Texas. He's the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Mr. Chairman, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
That is disgusting. The pressure campaign for Jordan was announced over the weekend. Calls like that started happening immediately. Jordan didn't denounce it until last night. What is going on in your party?
Well, this shows you the level of political discourse in this country now.
No, in your party, sir. In your party.
I think it's despicable.
So listen, right out the gate, notice how the Republican tries to say, well, he again tries to do what Republicans do, and this is allegedly a moderate, good faith Republican, and he says, well, listen, this is at the level of discourse that we have in this country. Jake Tapper is correct to say, no. This is not the level of discourse in this country. This is a unique problem to your party, and it's very important that influencers, commentators, pundits, people in the media, the journalists, don't both sides this issue, nor should they allow Republicans to both sides this issue. Of course, you can find instances of violence all over the political spectrum, but there is a meaningful difference in degree, and we've covered this in previous videos. The data are very clear. It is overwhelming, and it's been overwhelming for years. Just as we would meaningfully distinguish between a sinus infection and stage 4 cancer, that's kind of comparable to what we see in terms of violence between the left and the right. You can point out instances of violence on the left, but it is nowhere near as frequent or severe, nor tied to their political proxies, the Republican Party, as MAGA. It's just a unique problem to them. So good on Jake Tapper for pushing back. No. This is your party's fault. This is a problem with your party. What do you have to say about it? But it's not just this audio alone. So you have Marionette Miller Meeks, who is a Republican congresswoman. She issued a statement. Yesterday, I voted to support Jim Jordan's candidacy for the Speaker of the House. Blah, blah, blah. After one round of votes with my support, he was not able to secure enough votes. Today, it became abundantly clear that Jim Jordan did not have enough votes necessary. And so I voted in support of Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Kay Granger to serve as Speaker of the House. However, since my vote in support of Chairwoman Granger, I've received credible death threats and a barrage of threatening calls. The proper authorities have been notified and my office is cooperating fully. One thing I cannot stomach or support is a bully. But she's not alone. Drew Ferguson of Georgia said, as the Republican conference designee, I supported Congressman Jordan on the first ballot. Following the first vote, I had genuine concerns about the threatening tactics and pressure campaigns Jordan and his allies were using to leverage members for their votes. I discussed this directly with Jim and planned to support him on the second ballot. When the pressure campaigns and attacks on fellow members ramped up, it became clear to me that the House Republican Conference does not need a bully as Speaker. I cast my vote for Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Shortly after casting that vote, my family and I started receiving death threats. That's simply unacceptable, unforgivable, and will never be tolerated. There has never been anything like this with the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi didn't feel the need to reach out to, I don't know what the equivalent of Fox News is on the left, maybe MSNBC, but they're nowhere near as deranged, even if you're like from a centrist perspective, which I'm not, but they're not even a counterweight to Fox News. There's nothing like this, okay? Nancy Pelosi didn't need to devolve to such tactics or create the environment for such tactics in order to become Speaker of the House, once again demonstrating that whatever you feel about Nancy Pelosi, she's factually, objectively better than every single Republican politician. She's smarter, she's more effective, she's a better administrator, she's a better whip of votes. She's just superior in all ways. Now, for his part, Jim Jordan eventually publicly denounced these threats. No American should accost another for their beliefs. We condemn all threats against our colleagues, and it's imperative that we come together. Stop. It's abhorrent. But again, I'm not particularly inclined, nor should you be, to give Jim Jordan the benefit of the doubt here, because Jim Jordan is a MAGA cultist and deranged Republican. He has actively aided and abetted the source of this violent extremism, and that is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the cult leader of Jim Jordan's cult. Jim Jordan is merely one of like the inner circle. As we've covered in previous videos, and as others like Luke Beasley and David Pakman and Brian Tyler Cohen have covered as well, Trump's violent rhetoric, and Trump's been violent for years, but his violent rhetoric has become more violent as the years have gone on, more deranged, more unhinged. Jim Jordan still supports this man and has not condemned Trump's violent rhetoric. And even if he were to condemn Trump's violent rhetoric, the only way, since Trump continues to do it, won't repent, won't stop, and is only getting worse, if Jim Jordan really cared about preventing violence, then he would disavow Trump. He would say, listen, whatever we may or may not agree on, I can't support this. I've asked you to stop. I've asked to distance myself. You continue, so I can no longer support you for the presidency. Jim Jordan has not done that and will not do that. So he can say what he wants publicly, but he does support the conditions which create this violent rhetoric, these threats. He also supports the ultimate source of this violence and these threats. We don't just see it from, Trump and Trump supporters. We see it from Trump supporters like who are voters, like just everyday Americans. There is a core of the Republican voting base. There's a core of MAGA, which is very violent. Again, we covered it in previous videos. In the aftermath of his indictments, you have Trump supporters going on the record calling for civil war and threatening if Trump is arrested, if he's indicted, if he's convicted, there will be X, Y, and Z. We will rise up talking about shooting and violence and killing and murder and civil war. It's becoming pervasive. It's ultimately, the source again is Donald Trump, but Jim Jordan has held Trump's hand every step of the way. So we have no reason to put any stock in his public, tepid, late denunciation of the violence. It's not just Jim Jordan. You have Sarah Palin, who used to be John McCain of all people's running mate. We covered this in a previous video. She was calling for civil war. You have Mike Huckabee, who used to be a governor. He used to be a Republican presidential candidate. He's a pastor. He says, listen, you either elect Donald Trump or there's going to be civil war. He's calling for violence. You have a Georgia state senator. We've covered this in a previous video, also talking about civil war as well. Folks, this is what the Republican Party is. And when I say that, I'm going to throw up the disclaimer. It doesn't work for President Biden. It probably won't work for bad faith readings of my words, but I'll just add it anyway. I'm not talking about every Republican voter. I'm not talking about every conservative constituent. I'm not talking about that. I have family members whom I love and respect that I do not believe in my heart not only would never say anything like this, but wouldn't support it either. But there's more moral culpability on the Jim Jordans, the Sarah Palins, the Mike Huckabees, the Colton Moores, who is the Georgia state senator, and certainly the Donald Trump, because they're the leaders of this party. They're in the leadership. They know better. They are experienced politicians. They have influence over their constituency and their base. It's not just that their base pushes them. It's a feedback loop. Donald Trump, yes, is motivated by his base, but he helped create his base and exacerbate his base and rile up. It's a constant feedback loop. If Jim Jordan were an actual leader, if Donald Trump were an actual leader, if Sarah Palin and all the others were actual leaders, they wouldn't just occasionally go, we shouldn't do this. They would go to shape the message, go to shape the animating principle, they would try to reshape it. They would say, not only am I saying that we're not like this, I will actively make us not like this. I will actively do my part to reshape the attitudes of the base as a leader of the party. Jim Jordan helped create actively the conditions and the attitudes which created these threats, the kind that we just read about and the kind that we just heard about. This is a uniquely Republican problem. This is not a problem on the left. This is not a problem with the Democratic Party. Thus, I say again, because it's just a recurring theme of this channel, just in case you need any additional proof, or just in case there's somebody you know who might be tipped over by this, this is eminently disqualifying. The Republican Party as we know it today, the leadership, the politicians, people like Jim Jordan, even, it's not Mike Lawler, I think it's McCall was the name of the Republican that Jake Tapper was interviewing. Unless he's prepared to make it a mission to condemn consistently, loudly, and also to admit that it's a problem unique to his party and his party alone, unless he's prepared to do what Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger have done, which said, listen, I may be a principled conservative, I may be a conservative, in terms of my ideology, but I denounce the Republican Party in its current form, and we have, as the Republican Party in its current form has surrendered their moral authority or whatever, their moral or political authority, their right to govern, the responsibility of govern, they've surrendered that to the Democratic Party. Unless the people like Jim Jordan and Republican politicians are prepared to do that, then these tepid, that's really bad, we shouldn't do that, oh golly gee, that's unacceptable. It's woefully inadequate. The Republican Party is a failure morally, in terms of governance, every which way. They are objectively inferior in all ways to the Democratic Party. And that's why as we head into 2024, it's imperative, wherever possible, we vote these guys out. Not just Jim Jordan, but also even the alleged moderates who don't vociferously and consistently condemn this. And stop talking about Democrats. Get your own house in order. As Jordan Peterson said, well, you need to get your own house in order. Republicans should take his advice. Don't say a word about Democrats. Democrats are better than you, Republican politicians. They're better than you. They're smarter than you. They're superior to you. So stop talking about the relatively minor issues within the Democratic Party and start focusing on your own party. Start addressing the violent rhetoric in your own party, because there's a lot bigger mess in your house than in the Democrats' house. That's how I feel on the subject. You let me know what you think in the comments below.